Chapter 1. Pearl. The guardian urged them to hurry. The clouds, moving in front of the moonlight, were about to disperse, and little Sem had started crying again. This child needed to be connected to the machine much longer than the others, to have a normal day. The guardian thought they couldn't stay on the slope, where they were hiding, any longer. The gangsters could locate them at any moment. And the devices they had were very valuable. If he had to leave little Sem behind, he wouldn't hesitate to do so. When the child fell to the ground and started thrashing, his brothers immediately put the mouthpiece on him, to stop him from screaming, but it didn't seem to be enough. Staying on the slope any longer, or having little Sem walk, was not an option. The guardian lifted his head and examined the slope. During moments of indecision, he would remain silent for a long time. Little Sem and the others had learned to wait patiently at such times. Daylight was at least 1, maybe 2 hours away, and if they wanted to dig a new grave, this could be their last chance. The guardian signaled to start the machine for little Sem. This meant the child would have to stay connected to the machine for at least 2 hours, but at least he could wait without causing a fuss. Besides, they had no other choice but to restart his implant, to make him behave normally again. It was impossible to separate a closed implant from the brainstem, or to control the software inside. A closed implant, as a terrifying man he met years ago had said, was a small gift from the machines to the human race. In the last 3 weeks, his crisis had struck for the second time. They all knew the child was nearing the end of the road. The terrible end would come within a few months at most. But not today, thought the guardian. He would continue to protect the child until that day came. They had found the child in the tunnels below the slope, less than 6 months ago. He was a smart, skilled, and kind-hearted child. He knew how to share his food. When the guardian left for a few weeks to think, he would look after those left behind. Is the child really dying? Thought the guardian. Then, without making the others notice, he examined the bruises around the child's rib cage. Daylight was less than an hour away, and leaving the priceless machine with little Sem and going to the graves would be madness. But they had to find the bones before the dust storms swept away the last graves. Then they could return and check on the child. While his brothers dug a hole deep enough to hide little Sem, the guardian placed the machine on the child's head. Then, pulling back one of his eyelids, he looked into his eyes, which seemed dead in the moonlight, for the last time. When he activated the device and tightened the shoulder straps, they would be ready to leave. Something stopped him when he stood up, and he took out his own mouth filter, placing it in the child's mouth. He knew they wouldn't find either the child or the machine when they returned. The cemetery was just below the slope, right above the large pit. Dust storms had filled one side of the pit with bones, and the implants within the pile had already been looted. The guardian hoped that the entire cemetery hadn't turned to dust and needed to be sure before leaving the slope. I'm so close, he thought. I'm so close to finding the answers. The old implants were filled with people's memories. They had managed to salvage only part of the data from the last implant they found 2 months ago, and the result was still the same. All human memories were similar. All the same. And humans were not talking. They communicated by touching each other, with movements learned by rote, just like fingers playing the piano freely taking control of the strings. After leaving little Sem, his brothers followed the guardian towards the remnants of the cemetery. One of them, who was limping, was slowing them down. But he was the one who had designed the simple circuit that helped find the implants. Moreover, he was the only one who could extract the data from the implant. They walked in the shadows of the night, until they reached the edge of the pit, which was magnified by the moonlight. The noise of machines clashing with the gangs somewhere far away was breaking the night. Hurry up, said the guardian. As the shadows moved like faint silhouettes in the night, and started hitting the ground with shovels and picks, the limping brother said, There! The shadows continued to dig, and finally, they found 3 skulls. 2 of them had no implants inside. But a small pearl dropped to the ground from the third one. The guardian picked up the implant and placed it in the metal case on his chest. The noise of the gangs was getting closer. It was dangerous to linger any longer. If they could reach the path leading to the bottom of the pit, they would be safe. After that, the limping brother would decode the data inside the implant as much as he could. The Guardian would note them down in his notebook, and then they would hit the road again. Because he would need to think long and hard about the notes he had, and talk to the wise man living far away. The limping brother had told him that he would get himself killed on one of these journeys, but the Guardian needed to solve the riddle. For weeks, he had been thinking the same thing. Somewhere out there, an implant containing the answers he sought was waiting for them. The Guardian didn't know what had happened in the past. The Guardian didn't know what his next step would be. In a world made of dust and bones, he was searching for answers to their past, while traveling from one slope to another.